Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. Today, we'll explore how our relationship with food and our bodies reflects the pain and trauma we've experienced, often rooted in early relational and developmental experiences. Most of us are here because we're on our own trauma healing journey or support others on theirs. And many of us have read The Body Keeps the Score by our founder, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. In it, we learn that body-based approaches are very effective for working through psychological trauma. Since trauma alters our nervous system, including the nervous system in the healing process is critical. That's what somatic treatments do. And utilizing a combination of therapies is very important because no single approach is typically sufficient on its own. That's why the Trauma Research Foundation is passionate about bringing you Integrate, mind-body practice for working through trauma. Our goal is to share a diverse range of body-based therapies with as many people as possible for free. We want people to know there are many options available and to have hope that some may be helpful to them. Another goal of Integrate is to give us the chance to not just talk about the approaches, but to embody them ourselves by practicing together. That's what we'll do today, practice embodiment. And we hope you walk away with a tool you can use or share right away. To help us to connect to ourselves during the session, we'll practice trauma-informed presence and disable the chat during certain portions. We'll also have time for a short Q&A at the end of the session, and you can drop questions in the Q&A box. I'm Mary Frangie. I produce Integrate, and I'm joined by Connor McCann, working quietly behind the scenes. As a quick notice regarding potentially sensitive content, this is a live unscripted webinar, and there may be topics, language, or stories shared that could be sensitive for some participants. We are absolutely excited to introduce you to Jeanne Catanzaro and shifting out of criticism and control using IFS to cultivate self-led relationships with food and the body. Dr. Jeanne Catanzaro is a clinical psychologist with more than 30 years of experience treating eating disorders, disordered eating, and trauma. She first trained in psychodynamic psychotherapy, somatic experiencing, and EMDR before discovering the internal family systems model, which has since become the foundation of her clinical work. Jeanne is the author of Unburdened Eating, an IFS-based approach to healing relationships with food and the body. She has also contributed several book chapters on IFS and eating issues. In addition to her clinical and writing work, Jeanne serves as vice president and co-owner of the Internal Family Systems Institute, where she helps guide the growth and teaching of IFS worldwide. Jeanne, we're so thrilled to have you. Thanks for being here. Take it away.
Thank you, Mary. Oh, it's really good to be here. I'm appreciating the opportunity to talk about something that I feel so passionate about. There's so much distress that comes from folks' relationships with food in their body, and so we're going to go right into that. But first, I thought we'd take a moment just to settle in. Some of you may be rushing in from somewhere. You may have somewhere to go right after this. So just to take a moment and just invite you to shift your attention inside. Getting comfortable in whatever way feels comfortable for you. And just to notice what's going on for you. You may notice parts you feel excited, you're hoping to learn something. You may notice parts who are apprehensive or feel skeptical. And just trying to see if you can welcome them all. Explorations about food and food in the body are never superficial. They always relate to much deeper concerns. And so just a reminder, as we do this exploration, that you are the expert of your system. Within you is a self who knows what you need. And so if an exercise or reflection doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong. I'm going to invite you to be curious about what feelings are coming up, because that's really where the learning is, right? Learning more about what is resonating, what isn't. And inviting you also to take a break, pause, come back, if you're watching this later. Just do what your system needs. And lastly, just checking in and seeing if you feel some spaciousness, any opening, some curiosity, and if there's anything that might help you open up a little bit more of that space. My hope for you today is that by engaging in this exploration, you might have a little bit more curiosity for the different parts of you who hold beliefs about food in your body, and hopefully a little bit more compassion. So again, just noticing, maybe taking a couple of deep breaths if that helps you, and making your way back out when that feels complete for you. So we are here because when it comes to food in the body, most of us have very strong beliefs about what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. Most increasingly, and an increasing number of people struggle with disordered eating globally. And so we know that this is really a very important issue. And so what I'd like to do is I'm not going to go into a big tutorial about IFS. I'd really like you to get more of a sense of what's going on in your system and kind of have more of an awareness of things from that perspective, not from a heady perspective. So I'm just going to invite you to consider, what are some of the rules that you hold about food in your body? What are some of the things, some of the ways that you criticize yourself or try to fix or change your body? And a few of them probably come to mind right away, right? Like, I should eat better, I should work out more, I should be more disciplined. Those are very common, right? We hear them all over the place. But in addition, I'm going to read a couple, because just to kind of prime the pump here, just see, um, some of these are familiar, I'm sure, but notice what resonates with you. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions afterwards. And if you have you may notice other ones that pop up as I'm saying this. So in the area of food, shoulds like, I should not eat carbs or sugar, particular foods. I should not eat anything with ingredients I can't pronounce. I should eat breakfast every day, or I should skip breakfast. Rules like that. I should make up for overeating by eating less the next day. In movement, you might have shoulds like, I should work out even when I'm tired. That I should be sore after strength training, or that I should be out of breath or work out long enough or sweat in order for something to count. In terms of health, all kinds of shoulds that people carry, like, I should lose weight to be healthy. I should not need to take medications. I should avoid caffeine or alcohol, things like that. And then there's also the area of appearance and aging, all these beliefs that we have in relationship to our bodies. I should look younger than my age. I should always be improving my appearance. I shouldn't let myself go. And then with also productivity and rest, I should only rest when all my work is done, right? Questioning, why do I need so much rest? I shouldn't need that. I should bounce back more quickly. Things like that. So really, when you consider it, there's a whole host of beliefs that parts of us carry about the way our bodies should be, how they should function, how they should look. And so just curious, as you're hearing some of the ones that I just read aloud, and there are many more, but for the sake of time, we could stick with these. Just wondering, which of them resonate the most with you in your system, if you can notice. And I'm wondering if we can open the chat for just to name, which of the areas do you notice more of your shoulds? Do they come up around food, around movement, health, aging? Just curious about. So
You want me to read some out,
sure,
Jeanne?
yeah, I'm trying to keep up. Yeah, there's a lot
Feeling
of health.
guilty, feeling guilty about eating sugary foods, aging, movement. I shouldn't rest until I've done all my tasks. especially carbs. I should exercise even when I'm tired. I should lose weight, exercise more, avoid a certain foods. I should be more productive. I have to eat healthy.
Mhm.
My body appearance, aging, lack of exercise. Tracy said all of the above.
That's right. I'm sure Tracy has a lot of company in that one, right? Mhm.
I shouldn't eat if I don't work out.
That's right. You've got to earn it. Mhm. Mhm.
I
That's really
must lose
great.
weight.
Mhm.
Mustn't age.
Right.
I need to lose weight to be healthy.
Mhm. Right.
I don't have enough energy to work out.
Mhm.
I force myself to swim to get fit. I should eat toxin free. My physical ability needs to improve.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really good.
Struggle. I struggle with eating enough and often enough.
Mhm.
I should eat less if I overeat.
Mhm. What's the point? I appreciate that one. What's the point? I'm doomed anyway. Mhm.
I eat too many sweets. What's wrong with me? Why can't I stop?
Mhm.
I should be kinder to myself about food. Want to eat nutritious, but may not give fat in my body.
Mhm.
Starve the next day if I overeat. I don't want to be seen until I lose weight.
Right.
I can't be seen eating.
Mhm.
I eat too fast. I'm addicted to sweet and comfort foods. I should weigh more. I should eat more. If I'm not able to lose weight, I can't be good in society.
Mhm. These are great.
A lot of shame around sweets. I
Mhm.
should be thinner. I feel shame about my appearance.
Mhm.
I actually hate my body. I should not eat sugar.
Mhm.
I shouldn't eat food with sugar in it. I look too old and feel like hiding.
Mhm.
I have to walk faster to gain any benefit. I have to eat cleanly.
Mhm. Right.
What's wrong with me?
That's right. It's really great. Other people can do this better. Very common, right? A part that's comparing, criticizing. Somebody else is doing it better.
Something good for me shouldn't be this hard.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm a failure for my partner.
Mhm. Yep.
I'm a glutton. Fat is unhealthy. Full stop. I should eat better for my child and to be a better mom. I need to look good in my clothes. I don't deserve to eat yet.
Okay.
I'm no longer beautiful.
Mhm. That so a lot of pain, right? A lot of pain. I'm helpless. I'm doomed. I'm too skinny. I need to eat more, right? Lots of judgments there too for folks who are skinny. Mhm. These are great. Really appreciate everybody sharing, the depth of the sharing. Mhm. So, so it's really great. I don't want to cut anybody off. I also, maybe in a couple of seconds, will want to shift into talking about some of this. Oh, I'm scared of being feminine. Yeah. So the original question somebody's asking, we were really exploring some of the shoulds, some of these beliefs, rules, beliefs that parts of you hold about how your body should look, function, age, you know, and just people noting where do they notice the strongest shoulds that they carry.
Mhm. My body keeps getting worse in spite of doing my best.
Mhm. Yeah, maybe we can stay with that one, right? No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, right? It's not good enough, right? Because one thing is for sure, our bodies are always changing, right? They're always changing. And so we all age, we all, we all shift in our appearance and um just that it's always a moving target, right? So that's one thing that really creates those feelings. Um so I think in the interest of covering some of what I think could be helpful in terms of alleviating some of the distress is to really just notice how many of these shoulds you have. I mean, there's so many, and oftentimes people can feel really overwhelmed by the number of them. I hope that you can see from the chat that you're not alone and that we live in a culture that is constantly generating a lot of shame and fear about our bodies. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And one of the things that is true is that a lot of these shoulds can sound reasonable, right? Like eating nourishing food can is helpful, right? It can be supportive. And movement can also be supportive. It can help you feel stronger and help you feel more energy. The issue is that when these beliefs become extreme and rigid, not flexible and not attuned to the oh, I think I need to speak up a little bit. Is that right, Mary? Okay, I'm gonna try. I'm a low talker, but I'm gonna try to speak a little bit louder because the problem is that these beliefs that many of us hold are not nuanced. They're not flexible, right? They're not attuned to the bodies we are living in right now. It's more of a sense of I'd better do this or else. And so from an IFS perspective, these shoulds, these rules that you carry are strategies that are held by parts of you who adopted them to deal with deeper pain. And so the deeper pain that comes from all the messages that you have absorbed about food in your body, right? About which bodies are more valuable and which bodies are likely to be harmed due to their size, their shape, their race, their gender expression, the socioeconomic status, your health, or your ability, right? There are these messages you get from the time you get here, and you start to notice that. And in addition to those wounds, because it is wounding to feel like you don't measure up, right? To have to carry shame because in some way it feels like your body isn't good enough for whatever reason. And but also in addition to that, to the wounds that come from other injuries, attachment injuries, other traumas, right? A lot of times when we're very young in particular, our ways of coping are limited, and one of them is food eating, not eating. And so a lot of times folks will they will often be shamed by the people around them, by their families, by the larger culture, again, evaluated for their appearance. And then, so these parts of us that get wounded and are carrying shame and fear motivate, and when that happens, when we do get hurt, other parts of us step in and adopt strategies designed to keep us away from that pain and also to prevent us from being hurt further. So, those of you who feel like if only I looked like this, then I would be okay, right? Those are strategies designed to keep you away from the vulnerability. And so when a voice inside of you says, what's wrong with you? You need to get to the gym or stop eating sugar, or I need to eat, I need to get away from toxic food. That part is trying to help you, right? It's trying to help you so that you don't worry, so that you feel more acceptable, so that you can belong, so that you don't you're away from the fears of rejection or feeling out of control. But so is the part that then responds by saying, but I want it, right? I just want to eat. I want to have what I want to have. And I don't feel like working out. And so, what looks like inconsistency or chaos when it comes to our relationships with food and our bodies is really just the activity of different protectors, right? Sorry, and different protectors, because each of our protectors believes that its strategy is the way to take care of us. And so, the disagreements between the protectors are natural, right? It's natural because when one part pushes, when one part says you criticizes you and says, you have to just cut that out. You can't have any of that. Then what happens is it creates a distress in the system. It's depriving, and it creates more of a sense of I can't have deprivation emotionally as well as physiologically. And when that gets to a certain level, other parts have to come in to relieve you from that, again, that deeper pain. And so the parts that come in and get you to binge, or they get you to shut down to exercise so that you don't move at all, those parts have their equal reasons for doing what they're doing. So again, it feels like there are these inner debates. And so one of the things I think that is tough is that um, as long as we are dominated by these protectors, we actually don't have any access to it, our own wisdom, our core wisdom, what IFS calls the self, which is an inner healing essence that can be with the different parts of us and in our day-to-day lives, negotiating life, and and knows how to heal the parts of us who get hurt or struggle along the way. And so a lot of you may know a little bit about the self, but it's really characterized by, in contrast to these protectors that feel driven, they feel urgent, they have to get somewhere. The self feels calm, it's curious, it's compassionate, right? It's interested in connection and creativity. And so, and it knows again what our parts need to heal. As long as we're dominated by these protectors who took on their roles and are stuck in the past with parts who got hurt when we were really young, usually, as long as we're dominated by these protectors, we can't access any of that energy. And so our focus remains on the behaviors. If only I could get myself to stop binging, or if I could only get that critical part to stop criticizing. So what we want to do is really check in with, start to get to know the different parts, the different protectors that really dominate your relationship with food in your body. If you can start to get curious with them, that's when you can start to have a different kind of relationship with them. And that will start to transform your relationship with food in your body. Because, and I'm going to shift soon so we can like check in with your system. But the issue is it's natural to have disagreements, polarizations, let's say, about food in your body. Like I wanted to go for a walk this morning, but another part of me knew that I really needed to prepare, right? So a little bit of a debate, an internal debate. So when I'm not driven by a part that feels like I better burn off some calories before I do this webinar, if I did have a protector that was protecting parts of me who hold shame and were really focused on the size of my body, then I would have felt driven. I have to go and take that walk, right? And now instead I can say, oh, it would be nice to walk, but I also need to do this now. So from this perspective that isn't burdened by shame or fear, I can say, hey, let's do that later. We'll take a walk. And I'm sorry you can't have your way right now, but we'll get to it later. So decisions about food in the body that emanate from self are flexible, they're attuned, right? They're really connected to what your own wisdom and its sense of what your parts. It's not driven by one particular part. And I just want to name one other thing. One of the things that's difficult is that a lot of the things, the protectors have some valid concern, as we said, like eating nourishing food is supportive of our health and our well-being. But when your day is organized around eating healthy food, and if not having access to what you consider healthy, not having access to certain types of foods really skews your feelings about yourself. You're failing. That's when things get tricky. But polarizations in our day to day, are natural. But when we're led by the self, we can check in with them and we can get a sense of what the different parts want and need and whether or not shame or fear is driving any of the decisions. So I'm just going to ask you to check in with, if you go back to the shoulds that you just focused on, and a number of you came up with a number of them in the chat, just to notice if there's any that you're curious about. So when we talk about accessing our self energy, the way that we can become more self-led in terms of in our relationship with the food and the body is to start to get to know the different protectors and establish different relationships with them. And it starts by being curious. And actually, it starts by holding the perspective that each of these parts is trying to do something helpful. And I'm going to encourage you just to take a moment and consider what happens in your system right now when you consider that each of these parts that you're noticing, the ones who criticize you or try to fix or change your body, and the ones that break those rules or rebel, each of those parts is trying to help you in some way. And I'm just wondering if we can open up the chat and just say, what do you notice in your system when you hold that in mind? Self-compassion, tense and unease, really tight. Mm-hmm. Fearful hope. Mm-hmm.
A bit of gratitude, more autonomy,
Mm-hmm.
fearful hope, sad,
Mm-hmm.
a kind of internal pain, restlessness, feeling sorry for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Both parts can be true.
Mm-hmm.
I feel shame for my failures,
Mm-hmm.
scared to give up carbs and sugar, gratitude, irritation,
Mm-hmm.
shame,
Okay.
confusion.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a big shift to start thinking about or considering the fact that these protectors, even when their strategies are painful or extreme, that they have a positive intention, right? It can bring up a lot to even just notice having so many different protectors. And so some of you are noticing activation, a lot of activation in your system, just considering that. And so I just want to extend some compassion, right? Again, these issues are fraught with a lot of different feelings, right?
Afraid to let go of the shoulds. I've managed a long time with these things.
That's right. That's right. That's one of the reasons why it can be difficult to even consider that they are parts and not all of you. Because the shoulds offer some relief, they offer some hope for relief, right? They offer some hope for relief of shame, of fear of being rejected, fear of getting sick, all of those things, right? They offer some hope. And
I'm
it's
trying
really, huh?
I'm trying so hard to save myself.
Mm-hmm.
Dissociated,
Yeah, yeah.
entitled now because I had ancestry that was deprived in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I feel sadness, I feel contradiction. It's so hard to sit with the pain. I have a
Mm-hmm.
fear of illness. I hate myself. I feel
Mm-hmm.
more agency to decide which part to listen to while compassion for the parts that are protecting.
Great. Mm-hmm.
It's hard to access the self you talk about. I feel fused with the protector.
Okay, great. So this is exactly all of you are giving voice to exactly what comes up when we start to get curious about our relationship with food and our bodies. I mean, these messages come from everywhere. Somebody that I work with talked about these burdens related to food and body being like layers of paint in a New York City apartment, I think of as There's so many, one on top of the other, that they're reinforced in so many ways. And so it can feel overwhelming. It can bring up a lot of sadness to even start to explore this and consider that there's a different way. And it can bring up hopelessness. And so it may be difficult for you to access your own curiosity, your own compassion for why parts of you do what they do. And so I'm going to invite you to see if you can just be present to that. And just notice what it's like when you make a little bit more room, just a little bit more room to be curious about, oh, I'm feeling dissociative. A part of me is wanting to shut this down. How might that be serving me? What might that part be protecting me from right now? What is it afraid I might become more aware of? The person who said, I'm afraid to give up my shoulds. I would say the majority of people I work with are afraid to give up their shoulds. Because the shoulds, each of our protectors has very good reasons for doing what it does. And we have to consider the context in which the protector, not only the context in which the protector took on its belief, its protective strategy, but also the context that supports it now. So a couple of you named, I have, whether, being in a relationship where your partner has certain expectations or concerns about being a good mom to your kids, right? We're also living in an age where there's so much messaging about food and bodies, a lot of it that's contradicting the messaging we heard just a few years ago, right? So just want to invite you to notice what's coming up, and I'm going to extend some compassion to you and let you know that it all makes sense, right? Our culture is saturated with beliefs about the way our bodies should be and function. And it's a very big shift to start to think about that there could be a different way of relating. And the different way of relating involves um, just being present again to where you are right now and not trying to force anything. Because if you feel hopeless, if you feel like you can't win, it's not going to get better, just being with those feelings will start to change your experience of those feelings. And you might also be able to take in what I'm saying, that the next piece of this is noticing the beliefs and practices that parts of you adopted to keep you safe, to keep you away from feelings. If I'm thinking about getting a certain number of carbs, or if I'm thinking about eating every color of the rainbow, maybe that's protecting me from the anxiety I have about work or the fear I have about my relationship not working out, right? To really get a sense that there's lots of good reasons. And once you start to get to know more about the good reasons, then you can actually get to know some of these protectors and get curious about their fears and address them, right? So you may need some support from a therapist to do this. I want to name that. It may be very important if you've got a lot of wounds that you carry, and if they're serving really important functions for you currently in the environment you're in, you're going to want to get some support from somebody, right? But as long as you're blended with these protectors, dominated by their thoughts and feelings and energies, you can't get curious about them, and you can't get to know what they're afraid of and address the fears, right? So the sense of being blended with a part is, that's all I can see, right? This is the way it is. It's just hopeless, right? It's never going to change. When we unblend a little bit, it starts by just noticing that that's, and maybe even checking in, where does that part show up in or around your body, right? Where do you notice it? Does it show up as an ache? Does it show up as a tension? And again, if parts of you are feeling dissociative and they don't want to go anywhere, just staying there. Just staying there. I see you, right? I really trust that there's a good reason why you're taking me out right now. I'm curious about what you're afraid would happen if you should ease back just a little bit. I just want to see if anybody is, no, somebody's just chatting about the Zoom. So I'm wondering if you want to take a moment, if it feels okay to you. Now, I just want to take a little bit of a pulse of the room because a lot of vulnerability is coming up, right? Just a lot of shame, a lot of sadness, and also there is some hope I'm seeing come in, some curiosity, like maybe there can be another way of looking at this, you know? So, um, yeah. So if it feels right to you, and again, if it doesn't, if you feel there's some vulnerable parts coming up that could use your attention, you have within you a self who knows what your parts need when you are distressed, right? So just taking a moment and seeing if you can extend any kind of acknowledgement, like I see you, I see that you're here, and it matters. You know? And then for those of you who did notice a should in your system, a rule, or a part of you that criticizes or tries to control you, I'm wondering if we can shift into a moment of just reflecting on a time when that should was dominant, when you were taken over by that should. It might be 5 minutes ago, it might have been this morning, but just noticing, seeing if you can take a moment and reflect back to that moment. And just notice if there's a character, how that part made itself known, right? How did you know it was there? By its tone of voice, by the things it was saying. And who did it sound like? Did it sound like your voice or did it sound like somebody else's voice? Just seeing if you can notice it. This part that holds a should, a rule.
By the shift into anger, somebody else's voice.
Yeah. And somebody asked about the prompts. So I'm just going to suggest that don't worry about the prompts. It's more of um, reflecting on a time when the should dominated and then just getting curious about how it showed up. Almost like if a person came into the room who was criticizing or shaming or right or worrying, fear mongering, like you better do this or else, right? Just notice how it showed up in your system, and it may just be through the thoughts and the ideas rather than any sensation.
I find myself judging myself and others. How do I get rid of this? Someone else says shame and tummy pains, and it's my mom's voice. The presence of procrastination.
Hmm.
I looked in the mirror, someone says.
Okay, so that activated it. That's what activated the should, right? So I need to do something. So when you start to track these different protectors, there are events or something sets it off, and then this critical part comes in, right? And then there's a reaction to the critical part or the one who's trying to control. Somebody said something I wanted to respond to about how do I get rid of the um the judgment of my own body or other people's bodies. This, if I could share one, if you took one thing away from this webinar, is you don't get rid of it. You help the part that took on that strategy, right? Because this these beliefs that certain bodies are less valuable, less acceptable than others, right? Or the shame that we take on from those messages often cause parts of us to become more judgmental, right? More vigilant, more judgmental about our own bodies and also judgmental about other people's bodies, right? There's a constant comparison. In fact, when you notice a part that's evaluating and considering whether or not you are superior or inferior to somebody, that's a pretty big tell. It's an indication that you're blended with a part. And we can't just tell the part to stop doing that. We have to heal the shame, the exiles, right? These parts that got exiled, right, by these strategies. Because as long as you're judging other people and yourself, you're kind of trying to get away from your own discomfort, your own shame and fear. So we can't tell the protector to stop doing that. What we can do is get curious about it, and we can ask it what it's afraid would happen if it didn't do that. And then we'll find out about the more vulnerable parts that it's protecting. And then we can go and we can help them. So, for example, if you were shamed a lot as a kid for looking the way you did or for being a certain weight, um, and this part is always judging you because it's wanting to help you become more acceptable, and so you won't get shamed anymore. But of course that backfires, because the more pressure there is, the more there's that stake for being a certain way. It's too extreme, it's too rigid, and other parts then reject that, rebel against it, and you end up in this cycle. But instead, if you can go get curious about when this part took on its strategy, who it's protecting, often very young parts of us who were hurt in early relationships where we were made to feel deficient or not worthy, or we were traumatized in another way. So, so we don't get rid of it. We shift our relationship to it. We get curious about it, and we learn more about the fears of what would happen if the part didn't keep doing this, so that we could then heal the exiles that were hurt originally.
The patriarchy, my mother, everyone who said I was fat, the world is fat phobic.
Mhm.
So it's coming from everywhere.
It is coming from everywhere. And I'm really glad people are naming this, because you're naming that um, it makes sense to have parts who feel like this is something that can't be shifted, right? Or have parts who feel a lot of fear about, if I change, some really harsh things are going to happen, right? And so what we do is we validate that. But they're from self. There's also a way of creating more safety for these parts. And so I mean, I wish I could cover everything today, but the beginning of that safety comes from recognizing that these parts do what they do for a reason. They can't just stop no matter how much we want them to, but that they will agree to make a shift when we can be with and heal what they're protecting. And yes, one of the things about IFS that I really like is its recognition that a lot of this is about a relationship. This isn't about you get a cognitive piece of information and then this idea that it's the patriarchy or it's racism. Exactly. Those things, all kinds of oppression, creates these burdens that drive protectors to do what they do. And having that intellectual awareness and the awareness that parts are trying to protect us is one that's important, but is not sufficient. What we need to do is really get in connection, notice the activation, notice when we're shutting down or we're getting supercharged up, notice the parts are holding shame, and really let them know you're not alone, right? I see you, you're not all alone. And reminding the protectors that there's an alternative to what they've been doing. If they can take the risk to let you show them that. And again, oftentimes, this requires support from somebody else or getting connected to communities of like minded people who also want to heal the burdens that they've taken on about food in their body. So I'm
And
just,
could you define it just very briefly, say a little bit more about what a protector is, and also how do I know it's a protector?
great.
Maybe I just hate being fat.
Maybe what?
Maybe I just hate being fat. How do I know there's a protector in there? Maybe I just hate being fat.
Yeah. So what's at stake? What's at stake if you didn't hate being fat, right? What would happen if you didn't hate being fat? I mean, the we live in a culture that is anti-fat, right? There's so many understandable reasons why parts can take on this belief that fatness is bad, right? And so what you're talking about right there is being blended fully with the part who believes like this is just the way it is, right? I just hate being fat. And so as you get more curious, why is that, right? Why is it that there's so much hatred about that, right? Kids don't come into the world hating their bodies, right? I really love a quote that Sonia Renee Taylor offers where she says that toddlers aren't lamenting the size of their thighs, right? They're not coming in like that. They're not saying, oh my God, I'm so fat. At other times in our history, fat was lauded. It was a sign of success, right? If you were fat, it meant good things, right? So, but now that's freighted with so much negativity. So the way we know it's a protector, thank you for bringing us back to that. We know it's a protector when it feels, um, I better do this or else. When it feels like that's the only perspective, right? That's when we know it's a part. Because almost everything in life, there are different aspects or different perspectives. So parts see things in black and white. I better do this or else. Whereas self has more of an openness to the complexities, right? Because just like I said, polarities in life, wanting one thing, doing another, that's just natural in our day to day. Even when we're not burdened with shame and fear about our bodies, again, that we want to have one thing for lunch, but that means foregoing another, right? I want to eat well for dinner, or I have an idea of what I want for dinner, but I don't want to cook, right? There's a natural conflicts among our parts. It's just when they're freighted with shame and fear and worthlessness. And then parts of us, protectors are the parts that adopt strategies to keep us away from our vulnerability, right? So there are two, I don't want to get too much into the teaching. I've wanted to keep a little bit more checking in with what you're noticing experientially. But basically our protectors are that if there's a part who has a role, a job to do in your system that has an agenda to fix you, change you, or to relieve the deprivation, or it wants relief from any number of feelings, those are protectors. So is that clear? I'm just wondering if people want to put in the chat whether or not that's clear or you need more.
Yes, very clear. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So when we're led by the self, it doesn't mean self is not a destination. It's not like we become self-led and that's it. We're all calm, we're all curious, we're all, compassionate. It's more about, can you open up just enough access to your calm, curiosity, and compassion so that you can get to know this part who holds this very strong belief, right? Because when you can unblend that little bit of self energy, that a little bit of curiosity, even if it's the sliver of, I just think I hate being fat and that's the way it should be. I think I just should be, right? Even if there's just a moment to just say, I see you. I see you, and I'm going to consider that maybe you don't have the corner on all of the reality, right? Even just to float that possibility. Maybe there could be a different way of seeing this. Even that, just a little bit more opening. And then when we can get more curious, is say, how did I come to believe? How did you're interviewing the part. And we're going to do something like that if I'm mindful about time. How did you come to believe that this is the way? And then even just that connection and that curiosity can start to help parts start to soften a little bit. Because again, they're all trying to help us out, but a lot of times they're not liked either by us or by other people. And so when there's no curiosity and there's a lot of dislike and a wish to reject certain parts, get rid of them, stop doing it, then if I came up to you and I said, I really hate that thing about you, would you want to tell me more? You wouldn't want to share more with me about how you came to feel that way. You'd probably want to go away from me, and with good reason. But if instead I said something like, I know these other, parts don't really like you. Let's say the one who eats at night. That's a common one, right? The parts who eat at night, I know there's a lot, they haven't really liked you very well, but I want to understand a little bit more about how you came to take on your role. What is it doing? What's your hope by eating at night? What are you hoping to provide? And what do you fear would happen if you didn't do this? And that starts shifting things, and you may just have the tiniest opening to then, expand from. And I want to say to this, IFS is about relationships. It's about having a relationship between yourself and these different parts. And it involves ongoing, like if I met you once and I said, hey, tell me, I mean, I guess I am today. I'm asking you to share your what's going on for you, and then we won't have a follow-up, right? But the fact of the matter is, this isn't a particular space. But if I'm getting to know a part and I get to know a little bit about how it feels, but then I never come back to it, again, it doesn't create more trust in myself as the leader of my system, right? And so I could say a lot about that, but basically, for the sake of time, what I would say is we notice the thoughts, beliefs, feelings we have. We notice when they're extreme, when they feel like this is just the way it is, when they feel all or nothing, and we see if we can get curious about it, about that belief, feeling, emotion. And if we can't, or energy rather, and if we can't get curious, we get curious about the part that's blocking our curiosity. There's no right or wrong to this. It's more about just following what's coming up for you in your system. So I'm just noticing there's a lot I would want to say, and we'll probably regret not saying, but I'm going to trust. I'm going to trust that it's good enough for right now, and I'm going to hope that, or um, like a resistance, don't want to do this. Can you consider that a really important bit of information about your system? No forcing yourself to do this exercise, just more like maybe you can spend the next couple of minutes just being present to that and just seeing if there's anything more that part wants you to know about why it's important not to go anywhere. And I'm going to invite you to turn your attention inside. And again, this is just going to be for a couple of minutes. It may be a minute longer because I can't find it on my screen. Okay. So this is an exercise we often do, and it's really just about getting to know a protector. Now, we often start with the parts that are criticizing or trying to control or manage us, because those are the ones that are oftentimes the ones that bring us into therapy or our clients into therapy. They're the ones that are often loudest, right? The ones that say, why am I eating at night? I shouldn't be eating, or, why can't I get to the gym? And so, again, if you're blended with a critic or one who's feeling like you got to do something here about your body, it's going to be very difficult to get to know these other parts of you, maybe the one that does eat at night. So we often start with the parts who are critical or trying to control or manage you. And for this, I'm going to encourage you not to you'll have access to this, so don't worry. And in the meantime, just to get curious a little bit about, just to get a little bit curious about what you notice without judging it, without trying to change it. So again, you might want to choose one of the shoulds, one of the parts you noticed before when we reflected on the parts who have ideas about what you should be doing with food or your body. And maybe pick one that doesn't feel like the most upsetting one or the most charged one. That might be helpful. Right? And then we're going to start with just noticing how you feel towards this part. Right? How you feel towards this part. And just if you have zero curiosity about it, just seeing if you can get curious about the one who won't let you get curious. And that's where you can spend your time. But if you can get curious, just letting this, just extending some curiosity to this part and starting by noticing where you notice this part and how it's showing up right now. And if it feels true, letting it know you're curious and just asking it to tell you a little bit about itself, right? What has it been trying to do for you, right? What is it trying to do? What is it hoping for? What is it hoping to prevent? Right? And see if it will let you know how long it's been doing this for you. How long it's been doing this for you, and how it came to take on its role, on its job. Was there a particular time or place or event? And not thinking, just seeing what pops in. And how did it how did it take on its role? Who is it protecting? And you can also ask this part, um, does it like doing what it does? Does it like what it does, or does it just feel like it has to do it? Right? How old does it think you are? And you may need to update it. Right? Our parts are young, they're often stuck in the past. So if it needs updating, just let it know how old you are and see how it responds to that. And if it's willing, it might be able to tell you a little bit more about what it's afraid would happen if it didn't do what it does for you. Again, just seeing if you could be present without trying to change, persuade, just being with it and with this part and its concerns. And then just taking a moment and noticing, just being present, just thanking this part for whatever it shared. And if you stayed with parts who didn't, so, so I do wish we had a lot more time, but we don't. And what I would say is, what's important here is that just the act of getting curious about a part is the beginning of what we call a self to part relationship. Even if it feels very hard right now to do that, it's the beginning, and beginnings are always hard, right? It's a new relationship, and relationships take time. Building trust takes time. There are lots of reasons why these parts don't trust the self. Oftentimes, they don't even know there's a self. They've been so locked into their strategies. There's a lot of pain that they protect, but also there's a lot of reinforcement all around them. So just it's the beginning. So hoping that you can consider that just even a little bit of an opening is helpful. And that the more you show up, the more you keep getting curious about some of these beliefs that feel like facts, these practices, I better do this or else, that there's a little bit more space and openness, right? A little bit more room for to question, why am I doing something? Is this what's this serving? And does this really emanate from my core wisdom? Or is it driven motivated more by fear and shame or a wish to distract? All of that. So, and I'm wondering if we could keep the chat open for a minute. Um, just I'm wondering, did any of you notice a little, in terms of what you noticed somatically as you extended some curiosity? I'm sure a number of things came up, but I'm just wondering if you want to name in the chat what you noticed. Some
De- Decreased physical tension. I cried. Deeper breathing, lightness, ability to pause and question.
Mhm,
Dizzy in my chest, tears, fear,
mhm,
lightness, pain in my chest, heaviness in my body, less tension,
mhm,
throat tension, heaviness in my womb, more in control. I got very sleepy,
mhm,
awareness of self-switching,
mhm,
less anxiety,
mhm,
feeling really excited about this process, grief,
mhm,
heaviness in the head,
mhm,
hope for change.
mhm,
I feel quite a bit quieter now. My breathing is quieter.
mhm,
Awareness of the loss of connection with my mother.
mhm, mhm,
More expansiveness in my core. I'm lighter.
mhm.
Tension in my stomach.
That's really great. Thank you for sharing some of those. I mean, all of those reactions, if you can be present to what happened in your system and be curious about it and keep what we're saying yoga, keep your eyes on your own mat, not looking to somebody else, because it would be nice if everybody just felt a relief of the tension, right? It would be nice not to feel confused or more tense or dizzy. And if you can get curious, again, that's another way of just being with what is. And it's a trail, what we call a trailhead, right? All these different parts have ways of communicating with us and making themselves known. So we often have parts who prefer certain communication over others. I like feeling clear, for example, right? I like feeling calm. When I'm connected to myself, I feel and I can feel some of that clarity and that calm. That is fantastic. But if when I do feel confused or I feel really sad or I feel frustrated, if I can make some space for that, that's going to change, right? It's going to change the experience of being with that. So really just appreciating when we get to know our protectors, it's a big risk for them to even consider getting to, allowing themselves to be known. So what you may notice is as they relax back a bit, some of the exiles they're trying to keep you from, some of that exiled feeling comes in, some of the grief, maybe some fear. You may also notice feeling calmer because the protector itself is feeling so driven, like I better do this or else is a really stressful way to live. So just being and accepting of the protector, right? From self saying, I get that you're trying to do something for me can bring the tension down. So just appreciate the depth of the sharing in just this brief hour that you all were able to do with, in just the virtual chat. It's been amazing. And so I think we probably need to shift into some time for Q&A, but I would just say that I wish we had a couple of days. So
Thank you so much, Jean. We do have some questions,
great.
and one that I've seen a few times is essentially this. What if a particular food rule is vital for health?
Right. Oh boy, that's a big one. It is so common. And again, these shoulds or rules that parts of us hold often have some truth to them. And in certain cases where you have medical condition, it actually made me a really important thing. But it's a very different thing if that it's a very different experience if you hold that food rule or that I don't know if rule if you hold that yeah, the food practice, right? If you hold it from a place of I better do this or else, and I'm bad if I don't stick to it, right? Which is often what our parts do. They hold on because the protectors that latch on to some of these food rules are really protecting parts who have a lot of fear, right? And in the case when there's health conditions, it's like if I don't do this, something bad could happen. So our protectors that want to protect us either from being hurt or being judged, let's say by doctors or others who have told us what we need to be doing, when they do it from a place of I better do this or else, a couple things happen. One is it doesn't feel good, and it can make the more vulnerable parts feel even more uh, fragile, right? A little bit more like tenuous. But the other thing is it invites rebellion from the parts who hate being deprived. So when we are led by the self, the conversation looks a lot different because the self is going to take into account all of the different parts. And the way it might look for me is I might notice that there's something I'm supposed to be doing, I've been encouraged to do that would support me health wise. And from self, I get information so that I have a sense of is that a reasonable thing that I'm not from a part might just latch on to information and just swallow it whole. From self, I'm going to consider more, is that really true? Does that support my system? This expert out here says that, but is this, what supports me? And then if I have to forego something because that's really going to support my well-being, it would be to to be able to be with the parts who hate that and to say, I really get how you hate having to do this. I really do. And it's it would be great if we could have this, but for the time being or for the ongoing, when we have this food, it really, or this, more generally a practice, engage in a certain practice, it really doesn't serve our well-being. But I really care about how you experience this. And I also want to get to know the parts you're protecting, the one who wishes or tries to get the food that isn't supportive, because maybe it relates to earlier experiences, right? Early experiences as a child where you're told you were bad for wanting certain things or you were deprived. And so then more healing can be done of the parts you had to go without, so that it's not like it becomes a happy thing to have to forego certain things, but it's much more, it's kinder, it's with a lot more compassion, and it's with much more respect for the sacrifice that the parts who want to eat it are making so that the whole system can be well, and that changes it. It changes how it feels.
How do we know that protectors are actually trying to protect us? What if they want to destroy us?
They can, a lot of times parts will say that. They'll say like this part that binges, it just doesn't want anything good for me. It just and there are times when I'm working with somebody and they say, I just hate myself. And that's just the way it is. I hate myself. I just want to hurt myself. Well, we all know, right, that there are good reasons, right, that this, when people have parts who feel suicidal or who want to hurt them, there's always some good reason for that. And that if we can get curious instead of just, one of the things about protectors is when we just follow them, swallow them whole, or obey them, right, or fight against them, we don't get anywhere. But when we get curious about how are you trying to help with the self-hatred, it always reveals something positive, even if it doesn't feel good, or even if the impact isn't great, right? There's always a positive intention. But I'm going to encourage you, because you are the expert of your system, to explore that. And if you do, and you're persistent, you will learn that each of these parts has a positive intention. This is in my experience.
So, what about the health issues from obesity? Isn't that protector part actually correct in wanting you to lose weight?
Um, well, I could spend a lot of time talking about that. There's so much bias related to fatness in our culture, so much shame, so much fear. And it's not that living in a larger body never has impact on the body, but a number of folks mentioned not getting enough food and being too thin, right? There's practices that we all have in terms of movement, in terms of food, that affect our bodies differently. And there are people, fatness is not that there's a big bias in our culture that fatness means unhealthy, and that is not true. So getting curious about, and also when we hold these extreme beliefs, and that one's a tough one for people to consider because there's so much messaging about it's always unhealthy, right? It's always bad for you. Then what happens is that protectors come in that make it very difficult just to even care for the body, right? So again, the issue is given the body that you're in right now, whatever, however it is, really getting curious about what are the beliefs, the extreme beliefs and feelings that parts of you hold so that you can increasingly unburden so you can be present to supporting your body in the best way you can right now. So and I'm sorry because I know I could speak much more about that particular question. But I think the most important thing is if, as a culture, we are hating and actually acting like it's okay to hate people in larger bodies, people whose bodies age, or people's bodies who aren't as able-bodied, then we're going to be constantly pitted against ourselves and not getting curious or being able to be present to what's going to support our well-being. And so that's the most important thing here. If I were to end on something, you know.
It's a perfect place to end. Jeannie, thank you so much for being here. This is a really informative, helpful session. And thanks to our audience. You've been really wonderful and engaged. You can find the replay in the TRF Somatic Library. And if this program is meaningful to you, please respond to our surveys. They help us grow, integrate. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.